Okay, so I mentioned the ontological key. Again, harmonic ratios, nature's fractals, and these truncated icosahedron, or octahedrons, I'm sorry. If you take a look here, you'll see in nanotechnology, advanced applications of engineered nanomaterials. Here are some examples. These are truncated octahedrons. They're really looking at these things and making all these wonderful discoveries, creating these incredibly stronger than steel, but also flexible at the same time, using these structures and making sheets of them, unwinding them. And then you look at the various journals, Nature, A Platonic Affair, solving the puzzle of packing the Platonic and above, and then the Archimedean solids. So here's Leonardo da Vinci's illustration of a truncated icosahedron, your football. And this thing, you see a pentagon in the center here surrounded by 5 hexagons. Penta 5. Anytime you have this, you've got golden sections galore. Anytime you create a pentagram inside, it cuts it in golden cuts. Anytime you have a hexagon, you have the closest packing of space. You also have the reason why 7 is the most, well, is a very important number in all religions and mythologies, because you have the 6 that surround the central 7th. The day of rest is in the center there. Here's what happens when you truncate an icosahedron. You end up with 12 pentagons, like a dodecahedron, but instead of 20 equilateral triangles, there's 20 hexagons. But more important for us, if the edge of the soccer ball or football is 1, go across to the other side, it's exactly 3 times the golden ratio. This is the thing that is being used now in nanotechnology. This is what led to several already, at least 2 Nobel Prizes in chemistry, and it's going to continue. Here you have these rectangles. Now they look a little bit different, but I wanted to at least show you what it looks like in the inner scaffolding, the structure. At right angles, these are all the same shapes, but because of the angle, they're 3 phi, or 3 golden ratios, times 1 in these rectangles. 3 phi, or 3 times golden ratio, and 1. And then we see it, this is a single fern in the Malaysian rainforest, and you see how nature will work with these numbers. Very simple, just like a buckyball. And there is a buckyball. There's carbon-60. Again, each of these points cuts a line in a golden cut. So if that whole line is to this longer segment there, golden ratio, just as this segment here is to this segment there, golden ratio, just as this segment here is to a little baby bear in there, golden ratio. And then you see what we're doing in science. So we're taking these are fullerene drugs that are being used to treat HIV virus. They make a cage out of it. I think I've got a better one here. A Bucky drug. Model of a fullerene-based HIV protease inhibitor, recently designed by Simon Friedman. Also in MRIs, they were using these cages, etc., to get contrast with the magnetic resonance. Everything is resonance, by the way. Everything is resonance. As Blavatsky said, atoms are vibrations. Everything is vibrations. Bucky Fuller, and the genius. This is one of the universal people, a Renaissance man, Renaissance person is a better word probably, a polymath, capable of doing all things. Then we go to ancient Egypt, and here I'm in Egypt, and it's nice to see there are horses there besides camels. And I'm at the base of the pyramid, and you see these are the casing stones that are still there. Well, I've jumped up into the king's chamber, and then actually dove inside, and the next thing I know, I'm up on top of the pyramid. Because I knew you're supposed to come out of your body, right? When you've seen those images. Of course, I had to climb this bugger. By the way, these marks here tell you that these things would lock together. You see those indentations? That's Khafre's pyramid over there. It'd be very difficult to climb that one. Here I'm in Tut's tomb. I had forgotten that this image actually is in Tut's tomb. I was there last summer and in the fall. But you notice he's wearing this jaguar skin. This is also related to visionary experiences, vision quests, initiations. People oftentimes will identify with the big cat, but I'm not going to make a big deal out of that here. I'm just addressing that to you. The reason it's the cat, I'll tell you why it is. It's because of the top of the food chain. So they have all the other life within them. And so when you resonate with a cat, big cat, they take on your consciousness, you take on theirs, and you have synesthetic experiences. You begin to see sound, hear colors, and I know for a fact that the jaguars and panthers can smell your heart beating at a distance. They can smell sound. That was the biggest, amazing revelation to me, was to realize that. And Dr. Baker would address these issues about synesthesia as well, because we compartmentalize things, but all is vibration. And when you go into these more mystical states, you begin to, these senses will cross over. We now realize that the golden section, which the ancient Egyptian priests who initiated both Pythagoras and Plato referred to as the primordial scission, is discoverable in the mathematical structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza, in both first and second canons of proportion, and I'm going to show you these, the canon of Polyclitus in Greece, and in the works of Cesariano, Durer, Da Vinci, and other Renaissance artists. So here's the primordial scission. Now you could flip this over and have the golden cut up here, but here's the cut. So here's the greater, here's the lesser. Unity becomes the geometric mean. Real quickly, if you start with this and pretend that this is 1 instead of big phi, this becomes phi, 0.618, and this becomes that little 0.382. Or if you have 360 degrees, 222.5 degrees, and here's the winding number of nature here, 137.5 degrees. It's also known as the genetic angle, a divergence angle and genetic angle, and it's also in physics as well. It's a winding number for physics, subatomic particles, hurricane, tornado, you name it, and it's how the leaves will form on a stem. They gravitate towards that. So here's how it fractalizes, and this is Plato's divided line. Here's the world of forms, mathematicals, everyday objects, down in the cave, the objects we create. But you see, it's the whole thing. It's all, I mean, the whole line is to the upper segment as the upper is to lower, and then you see it fractalizes. Here's how you make a golden ratio, but we don't really need to get into that. You can look in the book to see that if you get it. But this is interesting. Next to the Sphinx is a passageway that in a sense goes nowhere, but it does, well, that's what they say, but it does go up to the causeway that goes up to Khafre's pyramid. But other than that, people have been totally perplexed of what it's all about. Well, it turns out that it's 26.5 degrees in its angle, and it was discovered by Robert Temple, another one of your fellow Englishmen, that that angle, let me go back, when you take and you cut this, there really should be a line here to show you, and then you take the diagonal of what amounts to, what shape would you have if you cut a square in half and forget about this and forget about that? What would that shape be right there? It'd be a rectangle made up of 2 squares. It's a double square. When you put a diagonal through a double square, that's √5. But that angle right there is really important, because this is how you get the golden ratio. It's 26.5 degrees. So what the ancient Egyptians did is they encoded it all over the Giza Plateau, plus Fibonacci numbers. So guess what? Ascending passageway up to through the Grand Gallery up to the King's Chamber, 26.5 degrees. Descending passageway down into what Edgar Cayce called the Upside Down Chamber, which is the strangest place I've ever been in my entire life. Same angle. And then what Temple found on some old photographs is on the summer solstice, which I think is today. Is that correct? Some say it was yesterday, but I think I had someone tell me at Edinburgh, looking it up, that it may be today. Is that correct?
So someone
told you that? Yeah, well, I wasn't sure. Okay. Well, nevertheless, when I sign your book, I'm going to put down summer solstice. But anyway, on the summer solstice, Khafre's pyramid back here casts a shadow on the back of Khufu's Great Pyramid. My God, who could design something like this? 26.5 degrees. Now, how they get that, intricate number, I question that a little bit, but the casing stones, we can figure out the apothegm here. It turns out to be the golden ratio, and here's the secret of the Great Pyramid. Here's unity, or 1. With the capstone on it, it's square root of phi. You saw that earlier in my drawing. And then here's phi. 1.618 is the apothegm. That particular triangle is like you talk about a genetic triangle. That is it. There's life. That's incredible. And in the Temple of Man, the great alchemist and Egyptologist Walter de Lubitsch, here's what he says. And he studied the Temple of Luxor for 15 years. The golden section is not a product of mathematical imagination, but the natural principle of the laws of equilibrium. I don't know if I have it in here, but the Mahatmas, I think it's Kutumi in the Mahatma letters, indicates that there's one principle. One. Well, I think there's two, but when they say one principle, they actually mean not just equilibrium, but also, and symmetry, but also asymmetry. Because remember this, and they're also talking about order, but also chaos. Remember that the perfect symmetry you get with proportional symmetry is not cut in the center. It's asymmetric. That's what gives you proportional symmetry. And everything is then linked all the way up to the universe, all the way down. It's proportionally linked. Therefore, resonance works. So when you look at, for example, L.C. Kielland's Geometry in Egyptian Art, on Egyptian reliefs and sculptures, we find lines, points giving evidence of geometrical constructions. Measurements indicate that the golden section was above all the means the Egyptians used to create divine order, etc., etc. I mean, you're going to find it everywhere. Alexander Badawi studied over 50 temples in Egypt and discovered they are designed using Fibonacci numbers. He documented, this is a difficult book to get, but this is incredible. Ancient Egyptian Architectural Design, a Study of Harmonic System, 1965. Here's the Fibonacci numbers. You begin with 0, the void. Out of the void comes the 1. The 1 reflects itself, much like you see in Manly Palmer Hall's book, the Kabbalistic image of the individual looking at itself, and that's what we're doing. We're looking back at our source. 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 5, 8, 13. 3 divided by 2, that's your musical fifth, 1.5. 5 divided by 3, 1.666. 8 divided by 5, 1.6. So what happens is it goes above and below. Every ratio approaches in the limit. Over here, you're moving towards this kind of ultimate source. It's actually what the ancient Greeks called teleological. Teleos, ends, purposes. We do have purposes and ends in this universe. It is not just some random chance nonsense. Okay, here in the mini symposium, you see that I'm using a little diagram here. I'll show you. And there it is. This is what is happening when you take these ratios and they're moving towards the golden ratio in the limit. If you took the smaller number and divided by the larger, you'd get the same thing, except you'd remove the 1 and they'd be moving towards the lesser there. Monuments throughout history where they're tuned in, they figure it out. So this would be the Ark of the Covenant. 2.5 cubits by 1.5 cubits is 5 divided by 3. Just like Christos divided by Iesus is 5 divided by 3. It's that number. This is astounding. This is John Martineau, who I mentioned earlier. This, by the way, some of it is in my little golden section book, Phi in the Sky. But however, we've got his book, Little Book of Coincidence, in that thicker book called Quadrivium that's on the table in there. There are 6 wooden books in there. One of them is his Little Book of Coincidence, which when astronomers see it, they stick their tail between their legs and they run. Or they try to figure it out. At the University of Florida now, the astronomer at the University of Florida starts his class, Fibonacci numbers. Now look what's happening. From the Earth, now this is geocentric, Sun in the center. If you observe Venus and connect, draw a line between Venus and the Earth every day, this is the pattern that you're going to get. It forms a rosette. You get this picture after 8 Earth years. The 5-pointed star after 8 years, and on Venus that is 13 years. 13 is to 8 is as 8 is to 5. Those are Fibonacci numbers. Genetics and turbulence. So water turbulence, air turbulence, and genetics. Nucleotide frequencies in the human genome and Fibonacci numbers. This is Yamagishi and Shimabukuro, Bulletin of Mathematical Biology. but they are not the only ones. Perez, Codex Biogenesis. This guy is the brightest of the bunch, Pedikov, and he's contributed to my book, Mathematics, and they're now calling it bioinformation or bioinformatics. He's developed these matrices that are just absolutely incredible, all based upon the golden section. Chaotic climate dynamics, Selvum, nonlinear dynamics, you're finding the same thing. I actually took one image here. Here's the quasi-periodic Penrose tiling pattern, which forms the internal structure of eddy circulations. I've got so much I can't dilly-dally for you, but I'm telling you this is throughout nature. Canons of human proportion. This is what I was showing you earlier, except this is a golden calipers that allows you to get a double at the same time. And you see these are all in phi ratio or golden ratio. I was simply showing you the 3 phalanges of one of the fingers. Here is the first Egyptian canon. They took it up to the midpoint of the head, and if you count, you'll find that there are 18 units up. Actually 19 if you go just above the head. It's probably more like 18 and a half. But this is the point, and you can see from the diagram why this is significant at 18, and then the belly button takes them at 11. These are Lucas numbers. In the second Egyptian canon, 21 units up to the point that they're using here. Again, it's kind of mid-forehead, and then, but you see the design and why they do it, and then it's 13 up to the navel. Basically, it's a phi cut. Essentially, 18 is to 13, I'm sorry, 21, did I say 18? 21 is to 13 Fibonacci numbers. Lance Harding, who got his doctorate here at the Prince of Wales Institute at VITA, Visual Islamic and Traditional Arts. Lance Harding got his dissertation there, did his dissertation. This is his drawing. In my little golden section book, you'll see that it's the first page you come to. You open it up. This combines canons of proportion from several different cultures. Lance Harding went with me to Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, where you've got Alex Gray, the visionary artist, and we did a seminar on golden section and the canon of human proportion theory and practice. Here's Alex Gray, here's Lance Harding, Dan Duddy, here is Zachariah Gregory, who did a few drawings for my book. This is the guts of E8. That is what is now being considered to be at the heart in physics, and it's all golden ratios. You're going to see, but it's much more complicated. That's using a Zohm toolkit, and this is also a kind of a drawing or painting of E8, but again, it's more sophisticated even than this. Phyllotaxis, leaf arrangements, symmetry in plants is probably the best book out there. It's a Monumental by Jean and Baraby. And here's what they say. I'll just pick out a few things. Daisies are well known to lovers. By the way, you know the Fibonacci numbers, you like somebody, you figure out how to start it. If you don't like somebody and you want to tell them, you start with the other, you know, because you just figure out how many petals are on there, and if it's a daisy, you probably have 13 petals, depending on the type of daisy. Anyway, spiral patterns made by the florets in the head of the daisy, or the patterns made by the scale of pine cones, are more significant for science than merely the petals or the spirals. Important. Daisies and sunflowers are the emblems of phyllotaxis. All the problems of phyllotaxis seem to be summarized therein. The presence of particular numbers, Fibonacci numbers, angle of 137.5 degrees, golden number. They also use tau from tome, which means to cut, besides the Greek letter phi, and forms, logarithmic spirals in their capituli, they shoot apices, demands an explanation, and has served as a spur to the human intellect. It is in phyllotaxis, the symmetry in plants is most striking and puzzling. See, when you have these anomalies and you solve the anomalies by coming up with the paradigm or the hypothesis that explains it, it furthers our consciousness. Pine cones, sunflowers, pineapples, Romanesco. Pineapples are very interesting because you get 3 Fibonacci numbers in sequence, not just 2. Whereas in the head of a sunflower, there'll be 2, and then you add them all up together, you're going to get, it's all Fibonacci. Pine cones, depending on the type of pine cone or the size of it, you may have 3:5 or 5:3, 8:5. You may have 13 spirals, 8 going the other way, 21 total. This shows you the fractalization, however. This is really beautiful because no matter how small you go, you're going to get the basic features of the whole. Well, here's the pineapple I was telling you about. So 13, 8, 5, and then here with the pinecone, 13, 8, if you count the spirals in opposite directions. 250,000 species of higher plants. Well, I've spent a lot of time in the rainforest in Peru in meditation, but there's only, and there are a lot more than 250,000 species, I'll guarantee you, but only 3 types of leaf arrangement. You have distichous, which is like corn. It goes, the biggest is the oldest. You go like this, back. So it goes like this at 180 degrees. Whorled, it goes like this, then it goes like this, 90 degrees. Spiral, like an ivy lupin potato, divergence angle, there it is, 137.5. You go here, 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 here. Underlying the diversity is an unexpected and startling degree of order. Brian Goodwin, another one of your countrymen, a genius. He's got everything Sheldrake has, but he also has Platonic knowledge about the solids and so forth. And here's what you find. 4 out of 5 of all plants, Spiralphyllotaxis, rotation angle, limited to only a few values, most common, 137.5 degrees. You see why I was showing you the... That's why yardsticks were real important, but we've given up on that, haven't we? The inch, the foot, and the yardstick. So you take a look, and it's so obvious. I mean, let's get this done. You look at wildflowers, the majority are pentagonal. Anytime you have a pentagon, I've already shown you the whole is to that segment, golden ratio, that is to that, golden ratio, that is to that. So the pentagram is one of the most sacred symbols there is. And of course, Kepler used pentagons also in his astrology charts, by the way. Resonance, Sheldrake and morphic resonance. I love that he got the cat in there as well. This is the bottom of a tin can resonating at different frequencies. So one of the first set of images ever created in Dennis Gabor's laboratory. These are holograms. So you see how sound is converted into shape and form. Okay? Here we're up in Peru with the Caro Indians who speak Quechua. And they are the remnants of the Incas. And this gentleman from UCLA reintroduced them to the use of their own whistling vessels. The sound that comes out of these whistling vessels puts one in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, a very simple way to do it. The Mocha, the Chimwa, Inca all had slightly different sounds coming out, and they're unique. In my museum, in my college, Appleton Museum, we have a whole slew of these whistling vessels. Here from Little Book of Coincidence by John Martineau, Mercury and Venus, Mercury and the Earth. You'll see these different, Mercury and Mars, you'll see these different relationships. Here's Venus and Earth. You saw that pentagon before, or pentagram. And so they're all harmonic relationships going on, resonances, in other words, with the various planets. Quantum consciousness. Oh, that word quantum. And everybody likes to use that now. And Douglas Baker, Dr. Douglas Baker, towards the end of his life, he was resonating with quantum. He wanted to bring this out. You know, I used to do research for him. He would go into the inner worlds at night. He would discover these things, probably with higher beings, however he got it, bring it out. I'd go over to the British Museum Library, because back when I was in school, they still had it in the old museum there. Now, much of the stuff is in the British Library itself. But I would do research for him based upon what he would find in the inner worlds. Quite incredible. But remember Baker when you look at this stuff. Shadows of the Mind, Roger Penrose, a search for the missing science of consciousness. And they're looking at the microtubules as these quantum computers. And as I told you, they're made up of 13 columns of tubulin dimers or filaments, 8 spiraling one way, 5 the other. Penrose says, why do Fibonacci numbers arise in microtubule structure? Kind of a rhetorical question, because I'm sure that he knows, but he raises the question in Shadows of the Mind. These are the clathrons at the tip of the microtubules. They're Buckminster fullerenes. They're truncated icosahedra. You see the pentagon, you see the hexagon surrounding it, and here they are. Here's the synaptic cleft. Here are the microtubules. Here are the little buckyballs. I'm convinced that shamans in deep sacramental states of consciousness, when they see the serpents and they see the jewel in their mouths, and you look at the jewels that they describe, you'll see a hexagon, they are probably seeing into the microtubules and the clathrons and probably the DNA as well. Image in my book, Resonance, Shamans, Buddhas, and Resonance in Consciousness. Microtubules, clathrons, DNA, that's looking down a microtubule, cross-section of the DNA, the decagon, it's all golden ratios. I got one of the shamans in Peru to go ahead and do a painting for me, a famous Pablo Amaringo. He knew immediately what I was talking about. I wish I could show you that in color rather than merely black and white. Holographic universe. David Bohm was my teacher at Birkbeck. Fortunately, the head of the department in physics there, I was studying philosophy, said, "You've got to study with Bohm." I was one of 3 students. We met in his office, so it was a blessing. I don't know how it ever happened, but it happened. This is the key to what he had to say. The essential features of quantum interconnectedness are that the whole universe is in some way enfolded in each and every individual thing, including you and me. And that each thing is enfolded in the whole. It's the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, and as below, so above. But you gotta get the intermediate to figure it out. That's where the golden mean comes in to join the above and the below. That's why it is the golden key. This is from David Bohm's Undivided Universe. Scientific American, several years ago, are you a hologram? Quantum physics says the entire universe might be. They don't say might anymore. They realize that's what's going on. What's important about that is when you create a hologram, you can shatter, it's made out of light, laser light, but if you shatter it into 1 billion pieces, and you have one little piece, let's say you have an apple, and the piece that you pick up on is from the leaf, let's say, you shine light through, you get the whole apple. Each part contains the information of the entire universe. That's why we all have an Atman, which is one with Brahman. Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness. It's all fractal, fractalized, but I've said enough about that. You can see, even no matter how small you go, you're going to see the same basic pattern. Non-locality. This came up earlier. Edgar Mitchell, 6th man to walk on the moon. Good friend, and he is the one who's looking now at the Fibonacci and golden computers. Here's what he says in Nature's Mind, the Quantum Hologram. It has been widely accepted in science until recently that the brain is merely a complex classical computer, incapable of supporting quantum processes. However, the work by Hameroff and Penrose in isolating and describing what? Microtubules in brain tissue have caused a re-examination of this dogma and renewed interest in uncovering the quantum processes involved. EM is Edgar Mitchell. He went into Samadhi on the way back from the moon. He started Institute of Noetic Sciences, wrote the book The Way of the Explorer, and Apollo Astronaut's Journey Through the Material and Mystical Worlds. I guess I'm going a little fast. I hope you're able to understand me clearly, but I'm downloading this into your computer so you get it. Religious and mystical experience and all psychic effects are, by this way of thinking, a result of the individual bringing non-local information to the level of conscious awareness. When in these states and intending a particular action, look at the language he uses. Resonances within the field are altered, and energy from the 0-point field is available to create the desired effects. He is the one who also carried out successful telepathy experiments on the way back from the moon. He guided the lunar module in for the landing, but then he got a break. Went into Samadhi. I think he did his experiments first, telepathy. NASA called him the brain. You know why? Because his left hemisphere functioned fully, but he could chew bubble gum and walk at the same time because the intuitive, non-dominant hemisphere, which is linked up to the universe, which makes you like an oracle. If you meditate, you ponder, Einstein would do this, you ponder the details, the observables, and then you go into a meditative state, and the universe, you ask the question, the universe will respond, just like the Pythia at Delphi. I did a presentation with him in 2005. His title was Frontiers of Consciousness Studies. I'm only showing you this because I want you to see what I was working on. Consciousness, resonance, and self-identity. We change our identity as we are transformed. Turning points of the spherical pendulum and the golden ratio. Actually, Mohammed El-Nashi sent me this from the European Journal of Physics because they were quoting my book in here. And it turns out that the pendulum is using the golden section, or the golden number, and so forth. To put our result in perspective, briefly, they discuss the relevance in physics. Transformations of consciousness. It's all alchemical. It's all transformative. A peak experience, this is what I take it to be, an existential event which dramatically transforms one's consciousness and corresponding paradigm or worldview. Samadhi, it's not the book that I'm showing you, it's the concept. Samadhi is the 8th limb of yoga. I think I've got, there we go, okay. Samadhi for the yoga and the Hindu, Satori for the Zen Buddhists, Sahaj for the Sikhs, all these hissing when the Kundalini comes up the spine. There's a reason that's at the front of each of those words. And cosmic consciousness involves omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, all knowledge, all power, because you are it. If you actually go into it, it's not you there in the presence of the burning bush and there's the divine. You are it, but so is everybody else. The problem sometimes is people come back with a half-baked experience and they think that they are Jesus or something like that. It's bull. And then there's the light that occurs and this incredible bliss or ecstasy. Also, you could talk about the eternal now, because it's incredible the kinds of experiences, even approaching this type of thing, when you go into these states. Here by Alex Gray is a painting of the Bodhisattva. That's the goal standing before every single one of it. Instead of Homo sapien, Homo luminosity, I don't know what to call it, but the stage where the human being is in the enlightened state, that is our goal. There's a very good book called Irreducible Mind Toward a Psychology for the 21st Century, Edward Kelly, Emily Kelly, NDEs and OBEs, Initiations, Near-Death Experiences, and Vision Quests. They share in common vision, epiphany, intense light, no fear of death when they're after the experience. It's transformative. Many are given the geometric key to nature. And that's what I'm actually researching right now. Near-death experiences and others who've had this experience, including the formula and even the equations. The inner guide, the daemon, the higher self that's probably speaking through the right non-dominant hemisphere, much like Socrates had that inner voice. The blind see. We know that the blind during these experiences will see, even if they're congenitally blind. I found at Eleusis, where the initiations would occur, 4,000 people simultaneously initiated. Eucrates was blind. The stela shows him. I think I may have the stela in here, so let's just go on. But he saw during the experience, nature, animals, and plants become extremely important. Synesthesia. That's the talk that I gave, a plenary session at IANS, International Association of Near-Death Studies. I gave one similar to this the other day. I think it was in Chester. I think that's what I was doing. Anyway, Mindsight, Kenneth Ring, Near-Death and Out-of-Body Experiences in the Blind. So I'm trying to share some titles for you. Dannion Brinkley. Here we are at the 2012 conference. He's the one struck by lightning, came down the phone line, blew him out of his shoes. The nails in the shoes welded to the nails in the floorboards, so he didn't blow up. But he went up the tunnel, and the tunnel was spiraling. Everything in nature is growing like this. It pushes out and it spins at the same time. Even the tunnel leading up to the light is spinning, much like the phyllotaxis you find with the plants. Tom Sawyer, what he learned from dying, oh my God, incredible. They like so much what I'm doing at IANS that they gave me all of his tapes to be able to study the discs. In Transformed by the Light by Melvin Moore, another guy, well, let me go back for a second. This guy got the most incredible information on the other side with the mathematical secrets of nature, I can assure you. Another one, Olaf Sundin, died during a tonsillectomy and was shown the mathematics of nature. what he called my cosmic gift. He now holds over 100 chemical patents. He only had a high school education. This is a biggie because this is blowing the neuroscientists away. It's Eben Alexander, Proof of Heaven, a neurosurgeon's journey into the afterlife. He had one of the most incredible near-death experiences on record. Teaches at Harvard, brilliant man, and he's shaking up the scientific community. And Dawkins' buddy, I forget his name, Dawkins, one of your people here who's really kind of narrow in his thinking, his buddy, who also publishes all this very narrow stuff, attacked him. Eben Alexander challenged him to a debate. Talk about sticking the tail between the legs or somewhere else and running off. The other guy didn't dare debate him because this guy's got it. And then probably one of the best researchers of all, PIM Van Lommel in the Netherlands, discusses the assertion of Hameroff and Penrose that, quote, microtubules inside neurons may initiate information processes via self-organizing patterns that trigger coherent states, and these might explain our experience, our ability to experience consciousness. He also refers to what happened in 1944 when quantum physicist Edwin Schrödinger proposed that DNA can function as a quantum antenna for non-local communication. He suggested that, quote, the DNA of living organisms has receptor or resonance potential for receiving and decoding information from non-local space. Van Lommel again, epigenetics. This business about random chance mutation, that happens, but it is not errors in the script that are perpetuated. That's nonsense. There is a much deeper, there's symbiosis, and then there's epigenetics that transfers things that you do in your life successfully in your meditations, your yoga, your spiritual practices into your offspring. It's the study of reversible changes in gene function that are brought about without altering the DNA sequence in the cell nucleus. It appears that non-local information exchange via resonance may play an essential role. Remember Sheldrake's, those dogmas, one of them, it only can happen through the physical, all nonsense. I don't think I should take time to read all of this. Van Lommel again, this endless consciousness can be experienced under different circumstances. I'll do the highlight. Experience of insight and enlightenment experience may be suitable terms as well as religious or mystical experience. But perhaps experience of non-local or endless consciousness is even better. In a poll by the Pew Research Center's Forum on Religion and Public Life in 2009, half of Americans say that they have had a religious or mystical experience, that is, a moment of religious or spiritual awakening. Hameroff sees DNA, not just the microtubules, as a potential quantum computer. Anytime you have quantum, you have superposition. Quantum superposition occurs during the coherent organization of photons and the self-organization of biological processes. Here's Hameroff, an image of an exploration of consciousness, finding spirit in the fabric of space and time. I'm not going to say any more about that. This is probably the most famous experience of Pamela Reynolds. The day I died, they put her in Operation Standstill and basically put her on ice and drained the blood out to get to a tumor at the base of the skull. She came out of the body, she observed what was going on, looked at the saw they were using to cut her skull open. It looked like an electric toothbrush. She gave this exquisite description, detailed description, and then one of them, she overheard while she's out of the body, one of them saying, well, I can't get into that artery, or something to that effect. I can't get in there. And the doctor says, go to the other side. Well, what happened was they couldn't get the blood out of the one artery, so they went into the other one. Golden physics, here we go. Golden ratio discovered in quantum world, hidden symmetry observed for the first time. We've already referred to this. January 7th, 2010, it's reported in Science Daily, but that's not where it was first reported. They have measured the signatures of a symmetry showing the same attributes as the golden ratio famous from art and architecture. My whole point is, it's not just beauty, it's not art and architecture only, it is science itself. El Nashi had already calculated the golden ratio as the basis of the fine structure constant, the subtle mean behind the quark masses, which result in the elementary particles, and noted that it rules the chaos border. It's called the CAM border, Kolmogorov, Arnold, and Mosier, and is ruled by the golden ratio. Here's one of his papers, The Fractal Geometrical Origin of Quantum Mechanics from Hardy's Quantum Entanglement. The key point here is that following John Bell, they found that the probability of quantum entanglement particles is 9.01. Trouble is he rounded this bugger off, and Penrose and El-Nashi didn't quite see it at first. This happens to be exactly the golden mean to the power of 5. Enough said there. Fibonacci code behind superstrings and p-branes, an answer to Michio Kaku's fundamental question. E8 right here, it's all golden ratios everywhere. Why is this such an important number? Here it is. Phi is the simplest continued fraction. Take a look at this. It equals 1 plus 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1 plus... My God. It's the simplest nested radical. Take a look. It is the most irrational of all the irrational numbers. Maybe I can sum up some of the languages coming up. And that gives stability, and therefore in physics it is the key for stability in physics. And it plays a central role as the winding number in the harmonic manifestation of quark and subatomic particle masses. We may come across his paper in 1994 as Quantum Space, a random Cantor set with a golden mean dimension at the core. The CAM theorem I just told you about, the chaos border, is the most stable periodic orbit is that which has an irrational ratio of resonance frequencies. Since the golden mean is the most irrational number, the corresponding orbit is the most stable orbit, etc. El-Nashi discovered that particle physics seen through the eye of what he calls E-infinity theory appears to be a cosmic symphony. The particles are a rather non-complex function of the golden mean and its derivatives. The following, you'll see the quark masses, here they are, up, down, strange, charm. Isn't that interesting? Bottom and top used to be called beauty and truth. And you see their values. These are what's been measured, both in what they call current and constituent mass, but here you're going to see it's all this harmonic scale. And here's the paper, the title of it, when he first came out with it. People are jealous about this. They try to get, everybody wants the Nobel Prize, so they try to knock them off base. When 0 is equal to 1, a set theoretical resolution of paradoxes. I did this paper with El-Nashi, published in Fractal Spacetime Non-Commutative Geometry. The power of the golden mean random Cantor sets are used in resolving these quantum paradoxes. You already know that the entanglement is phi to the 5th power. It solves the paradoxes of the double slit, of the wave-particle duality. I mean, I could go on and on and on. It is going to pave the way for a serious shift in the physics paradigm, one in which the golden mean plays a central role in the very fabric of space-time. We may be well on the threshold of a new era of what we will call golden physics. Here's why it's so important. In the paper, Golden Mean Computer for High-Energy Physics, you're going to see that it's the real solution of the simplest quadratic equation. Now we get a little bit more technical, but some of you want to see this. We've already seen the business about Penrose tiling, eigenfrequency of the simplest 2 degrees of freedom. We already did that, number 5. Number 6, we've seen the phyllotaxis. Number 7 is Hardy's quantum entanglement. I guess I covered it all. The golden mean, arithmetic, and number systems are a naturally quantized calculus with transition to 0 at infinity, and it is basically, the universe is a golden computer. The reason why physicists, some of them can't get it, is because they're using calculus. Calculus averages everything out. It's like being up in a plane way above the ocean. It all looks smooth. But when you use Cantor sets, or more refined mathematics, you begin to see the fractal nature of the waves and so forth. Here's some of you are looking for formulas and the value of this new equation that he's discovered. Here's phi to the fifth divided by 2 times mc squared times the mass times the speed of light squared. Prince of Wales, Harmony, a new way of looking at our world. It's an incredible book right here, published in the United Kingdom. And for those of you who have been asking me about this, where's the middle path of Buddha? Well, here it is. Now, this is not me. I believe this is correct, especially since studying Archimedes and the lever and so forth. It's in the golden cut. That is the middle path right there. The dynamic balance of phi. This is where I just came from in Ortygia, and this was the New York Open Center Esoteric Quest for Ancient Arabic and Medieval Philosophy, or Medieval Sicily. There's the Golden Section book. There's the one that's coming up, Divine Proportion, next year, The Mathematical Perfection of the Universe. I think that's it. Thank you very much.